The great hall buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in their floating chairs, whispering in dozens of languages. Above them, the massive dome showed the star map of their galaxy. One small section glowed red, with warning symbols. The Sol system, humanity's prison. Ambassador Kale stood at the center podium. His blue skin gleamed under the lights, and his 4 eyes scanned the crowd. He had called this emergency meeting for one reason. After 300 years, something was changing in the human system. Fellow beings, Kale began, his voice echoing through the hall. We gathered today because our sensors have detected unusual energy readings from the Sol barrier. The readings are unlike anything we have seen before. Murmurs filled the hall. The slumber protocol had been the galaxy's most important law since 2087. That was the year humans had sealed themselves away. The year everything changed. In the back of the hall, a figure in a dark hood listened carefully. This was Wu Jin, the last known human outside the Sol system. He had been just a child when his people retreated. Now he was old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He knew things the others did not. Minji, a young Vrex aide, sat near the front. She had purple skin and large green eyes. Unlike others of her kind, she was curious about humans. While everyone else feared them, she wanted to understand them. She had spent years secretly studying old human records. The energy patterns are growing stronger, Kale continued. Our scientists believe the barrier may be weakening. We must decide what to do. A tall being with scales stood up. This was Counselor Vorth from the Reptilian Collective. The law is clear, he hissed. We must not disturb the humans. They chose isolation for good reasons. But what if they are trying to break free? Asked another voice. This came from Captain Tae-hyun, who commanded the exploration ship Silent Dawn. He was visiting the council to report his findings near the Sol system. My ship detected strange readings 3 days ago. Space itself seemed to bend near their barrier. The hall erupted in frightened chatter. Some beings called for stronger defenses. Others suggested fleeing to distant galaxies. But Wu Jin knew. They did not understand the real danger. He stood up slowly, pulling back his hood. Gasps echoed through the hall. Many had never seen a human before. He looked ordinary compared to the other species. 2 eyes, normal skin, no special features. But everyone knew what humans could become. You speak of things you do not understand, Wu Jin said, his voice calm but firm. The barrier was not built to keep others out. It was built to keep us in. Ambassador Kale's eyes widened. Human, you are not permitted to speak here. The slumber protocol forbids human participation in galactic affairs. Then maybe it is time you learned why that protocol exists, Wu Jin replied. He walked slowly toward the center of the hall. Guards moved to stop him, but Kale raised a hand. Speak, Kale said, but know that your words will be recorded and judged. Wu Jin nodded. 300 years ago, something happened on Earth. Something that scared my people so much they chose exile over freedom. We did not retreat because we were defeated. We retreated because we were victorious. The hall fell silent. Even the translation devices seemed to pause. What do you mean? Minji asked, leaning forward. Wu Jin looked at her with sad eyes. We won a war we never meant to fight, against an enemy that threatened to destroy all life in our system. But the way we won, it changed us. It showed us what we could become. and we decided that the galaxy was safer with us asleep. Captain Tae-hyun stepped forward. My ship's sensors detected temporal distortions near your barrier. Time moved differently in some areas. How is that possible? Because when humans are truly threatened, when we face complete destruction, something wakes up inside us. Something that should stay sleeping. Woo Jin's voice grew quieter. We call it the deep memory. It remembers things from long ago. Things we forgot on purpose. Kale exchanged glances with other council members. What kind of things? The kind that could reshape reality itself, Woo Jin said. The kind that could make gods out of mortals. The kind that could turn protectors into tyrants without meaning to. A new voice spoke from the shadows. He speaks the truth. Everyone turned to see an ancient being emerge from a hidden entrance. This was Elder Nuri, one of the mysterious keepers. The keepers were old, older than most civilizations. They rarely spoke to the council. Elder Nuri, Kale bowed. Why do you come? Here now? Because the time of sleeping ends, Nuri said. Her voice sounded like wind through ancient trees. The humans stir, and when they wake, the universe will change again. Minji felt her heart race. She had read fragments of old records, hints about something called the Terra Incident. But the files were mostly destroyed or classified beyond her reach. What really happened 300 years ago? She asked. Woo Jin and Nuri looked at each other. Some kind of understanding passed between them. Tell them, Nuri said softly. Woo Jin took a deep breath. An alien fleet attacked Earth. They called themselves the Devourers. They had destroyed dozens of worlds before reaching us. Their ships could eat planets, turning matter into energy for their war machine. He paused, remembering. We fought them with everything we had. Ships, weapons, soldiers, nothing worked. They were too advanced, too powerful. In 3 days, they had reached Earth's orbit. In 6 hours, they would begin consuming our world. The hall was completely silent now. That was when it happened, Woo Jin continued. When humanity faced total extinction, something ancient woke up in our minds. Suddenly, we could do things that should have been impossible. Our soldiers moved faster than light. Our engineers built weapons that could cut through dimensions. Our telepaths reached across space and time. We destroyed the Devourer fleet in minutes, he said. But we did not stop there. We followed their trail across the galaxy. We found every world they had touched, every species they had enslaved. And we fixed it. We brought dead worlds back to life. We freed enslaved minds. We turned back time itself to undo their damage. Captain Tae-hyun stared in amazement. That sounds wonderful. Why did you stop? Woo Jin's expression grew dark. Because we realized we could not turn it off. The power was still there, still growing. Some humans started changing other species without asking. They made plants grow. Faster, animals smarter, people stronger. They thought they were helping. But we were taking away choice, he said. We were becoming the very thing we had fought against. Being so powerful that others could not resist us, even when we meant well. Elder Nuri nodded. So they chose sleep, the wisest choice in galactic history. The barrier was built by both, humans and the galactic community, Woo Jin explained. We went into a deep sleep, sharing our consciousness in a dream state. The galaxy agreed to leave us alone. Everyone thought it was temporary, just until we learned to control the power. But you never learned, Minji said, understanding dawning in her eyes. No, Woo Jin said sadly, because the power is not something that can be controlled. It can only be chosen or rejected, and we chose to reject it by sleeping." Ambassador Kale felt a chill run through his body. "And now you are waking up?" "The universe is calling to us," Wu Jin said. "Something is coming, something that will threaten all life again, and our people are starting to hear that call in their dreams." The council members looked at each other with growing fear. They had lived in peace for 3 centuries, believing the greatest threat was safely sleeping. Now they learned that their protectors and their greatest danger were the same beings. "What do we do?" Kyle asked. Wu Jin pulled his hood back up and turned to leave. "Pray that when we wake up, we remember why we chose to sleep." Minji could not sleep. The human's words kept echoing in her mind. She walked through the empty corridors of the Vrex government building, her bare feet silent on the cool metal floors. Everyone else was resting, but her curiosity burned too. Bright for sleep, she made her way to the restricted archives deep beneath the building. Her security clearance as Ambassador Kale's aide gave her access to many files, but not the ones she really wanted to see. Those were marked with the highest classification levels, sealed away from all but the most senior officials. But Minji had learned to be creative. She had spent months mapping the archive's security systems. Tonight, she would finally see the truth about the Terra incident. The archive door scanned her identity chip and opened with a soft hiss. Inside, rows of data storage units stretched into the darkness. Each unit contained the history of their civilization. But somewhere in this maze was the forbidden section. She moved carefully through the aisles, checking the classification codes on each unit. Most contained routine diplomatic records, trade agreements, and exploration reports. Then she found it. A section marked with symbols she had never seen before. The units here were different too, older and more heavily secured. Minji pulled out a small device she had built in secret. It was designed to bypass security locks by mimicking authorized access codes. She connected it to the first storage unit and waited. After several tense minutes, the lock clicked open. Inside were data crystals arranged in careful rows. Each crystal was labeled with dates from around the time of the Terra incident. She selected one marked First Contact Human Response Analysis and inserted it into her portable reader. The holographic display flickered to life, showing footage that made her gasp. Human soldiers were moving through space without protective suits, breathing vacuum as if it were air. Their movements were impossibly fast, almost like they were teleporting short distances. When enemy weapons hit them, the humans simply absorbed the energy and kept fighting. But that was not the strangest part. In one clip, she watched a human engineer touch a damaged ship with his bare hands. The metal began to flow like liquid, repairing itself in seconds. Another showed a human woman looking at a dying planet and somehow making the atmosphere regenerate. "Impossible," Minji whispered. These recordings went against everything she knew about physics and biology. She selected another crystal. This one labeled Evacuation Protocols, Final Hours. The footage showed the last days before humanity's retreat. But these humans looked different from the warriors in the earlier recordings. They seemed exhausted, confused, almost frightened of themselves. In one clip, a human man was sitting in what looked like a garden. Plants around him were growing and changing, becoming more beautiful but also somehow wrong. The man was not touching them or using any technology. The changes happened just because he was there. "I cannot control it," the man said to someone, off camera. "Every time I think about making something better, it just happens. Yesterday I wanted the flowers to smell nicer, and now they produce sounds instead of scent. I am changing things without meaning to. Minji felt a chill run down her spine. She understood now why the humans had been so frightened of themselves. She loaded another crystal. This one showed a meeting between human leaders and early galactic representatives. The humans looked tired and sad, but also relieved when they spoke about the isolation plan. "We cannot stay among you," a human woman was saying. "Not like this. Every time we feel strong emotions, reality responds to our thoughts. When we are happy, dead worlds come back to life. When we are angry, suns burn brighter. When we are afraid, time itself slows down to protect us." An alien representative asked, "Cannot you learn to control these abilities?" The human woman shook her head. "That is what we thought at first. But the power is not something we learned. It is something we remembered. And once remembered, it cannot be forgotten again. The only way to stop using it is to stop being conscious." Minji paused the recording. She needed to understand what the woman meant by remembered. She searched through more crystals until she found one labeled Deep History, Predecessor Analysis. This recording showed human scientists studying their own DNA and brain patterns. What they found was shocking. Human genetic code contained sequences that should not exist in nature. Complex mathematical patterns that seemed designed rather than evolved. "We are not native to Earth," a human scientist explained to his colleagues. "Our DNA shows clear signs of artificial enhancement. Someone or something modified our ancestors long ago, then hid the modifications behind genetic locks." "What kind of locks?" another scientist asked. "Survival locks. The enhancements only activate when our species faces complete extinction. They are designed to make us into something that can overcome any threat. But they also make us into something that other species cannot live alongside safely." Minji set down her reader, her hands shaking. The humans were not just another evolved species. They were weapons created by someone else, weapons that had been sleeping for millions of years until the Devourers attacked. She loaded one final crystal, hoping to find information about who had created the humans. But instead, she found something even more disturbing. The recording showed the aftermath of the human victory over the Devourers. But humans had not stopped there. They had followed the Devourer's path across the galaxy, undoing damage and fixing problems. At first, this seemed wonderful. Dead worlds bloomed with life again. Enslaved species were freed. But then something changed. Humans began making improvements to species that had not asked for help. They made some aliens stronger, others smarter, others more peaceful. They thought they were helping, but they were taking away free will. In the recording, she watched a human standing on an alien world, surrounded by the planet's inhabitants. The beings there had been naturally aggressive, but the human's presence was making them calm and friendly. The human was not doing anything obvious, but his mere existence was changing their nature. "We are becoming gods," the human said sadly. "And gods cannot live among mortals without destroying what makes them mortal." Minji finally understood the true tragedy. Humans had not retreated because they were evil or dangerous by choice. They had retreated because their very existence was overwhelming the free will of other species. They were too powerful to coexist peacefully with anyone. But now, according to Wu Jin, they were starting to wake up. She quickly copied the most important files to her personal storage device and carefully returned the crystals to their places. As she was closing the last storage unit, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Minji quickly hid behind a row of storage units as two security guards entered the archive room. They were making their routine patrol, but something seemed different about them tonight. They moved more carefully, checking areas they usually ignored. "Any word from the monitoring stations near Sol?" one guard asked the other. "Nothing official, but my cousin works on Deep Space Station 7. He says they have been detecting strange energy pulses for the past week, getting stronger each day." "Think the humans are trying to break out?" "Do not know, but Command has put all border systems on high alert. Whatever is happening over there, they are taking it seriously." The guards finished their patrol and left. Minji waited several minutes before emerging from her hiding place. She made her way back to her quarters, her mind racing with questions. If the humans were really starting to wake up, what would happen to the galaxy? Would they remember the lessons that had made them choose exile? Or would they once again become the benevolent tyrants they had been before? As she reached her room, Minji made a decision. She needed to contact Captain Tae-hyun. His ship was the closest to the Sol system, and he might have more information about what was happening there. She activated her private communication console and sent an encrypted message to the Silent Dawn. If the humans were truly stirring from their 300-year sleep, the galaxy needed to know what to expect. And perhaps more importantly, they needed to decide whether to help humanity stay asleep or prepare for the consequences of their awakening. Outside her window, the stars seemed to flicker slightly, as if something was disturbing the fabric of space itself. Minji wondered if the changes had already begun. In the depths of space, monitoring stations around the Sol system detected another energy pulse. This one was stronger than the others, and it carried something that made their instruments malfunction. It carried dreams, human dreams of a time when they had been something greater and more terrible than any mortal species. The universe held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would remember why they had chosen to forget. Captain Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of the Silent Dawn, staring at the readings on his instruments. For the third day in a row, his ship's computers were showing impossible data. Space near the Sol system was behaving in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. "Captain," called his navigation officer, a young Vrex named Jamin, "we are receiving another encrypted message from Minji." Tae-hyun nodded. The diplomat's aide had been sending him information about her research into human history. Each message was more disturbing than the last. "Put it through to my private console." He read Minji's latest findings about human genetic modifications and the Terra incident. The information matched what his own sensors were detecting. Something was definitely changing in the human system. "Sir," interrupted his science officer, "you need to see this." Tae-hyun walked over to the science station. The display showed a three-dimensional map of local space around the Sol barrier, but instead of the normal steady energy field they had monitored for months, the barrier was now pulsing with complex patterns. "What am I looking at?" Tae-hyun asked. "The barrier is not just containing energy anymore," the science officer explained. "It is processing information. These patterns look like data streams, almost like a massive computer network." Before Tae-hyun could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The main view screen flickered and went dark, then slowly came back online. But now it showed something that should not exist. A space station hung in front of them, ancient and massive. It had not been there moments before. The station's design was unlike anything in current galactic databases, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Where did that come from?" Tae-hyun demanded. "Unknown, sir. It just appeared. No energy signature, no transition effects. It was not there, and then it was. A communication signal reached their ship. The voice that spoke was old beyond measure, carrying the weight of countless centuries. Silent Dawn, you are welcome here. I am Elder Hyok of the Keeper Station. Your captain and senior officers are invited aboard. We have much to discuss about the humans you monitor. Tae-hyun felt his mouth go dry. The Keepers were legendary, ancient beings who rarely contacted younger species. If they were revealing themselves now, the situation was more serious than anyone realized. 2 hours later, Tae-hyun found himself walking through corridors that defied physics. The station's interior was larger than its exterior could possibly contain. Gravity worked in different directions on different levels. Some walls showed star maps of galaxies that no longer existed. He was accompanied by Jamin and his chief engineer, a female Vrex named Sunmi. All three were trying not to stare at the impossible architecture around them. Elder Hyok met them in a chamber that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. He appeared as a tall, thin being with silver skin and eyes that held the depth of deep space. When he spoke, his words seemed to come from the air itself rather than his mouth. "You come seeking answers about the humans?" Hyok said. "But first, you must understand the true history of this galaxy." The chamber around them changed, becoming a vast display showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Different stars, different worlds, different species. Long before your civilizations existed, this galaxy was ruled by beings we call the predecessors. They were not conquerors or tyrants. They were gardeners, nurturing younger species and guiding their development. The display showed magnificent beings of pure energy working alongside primitive civilizations. They helped worlds develop life, guided evolution, and prevented cosmic disasters. The predecessors had transcended physical reality. Hyok continued. They could reshape matter with thought, travel through time, and exist in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, they were by any definition gods. Tae-hyun watched in amazement as the display showed predecessors stopping asteroid impacts, reigniting dying stars, and seeding new worlds with life. But absolute power brings absolute responsibility, Hyok said sadly. The predecessors found that their very existence dominated the free will of younger species. Beings near them could not help but worship and obey. Children of species they helped could not develop independently. The display changed, showing the predecessors gathering for what appeared to be a massive council. They realized they had become a barrier to the natural growth of the universe, so they made the ultimate sacrifice. They chose to fade from physical reality, to become dormant until the universe truly needed them again. "But they did not disappear completely?" Sunmi said, beginning to understand. "Correct. They seeded the galaxy with sleeper agents, beings who appeared to be ordinary species, but carried the genetic potential to awaken predecessor abilities when faced with extinction-level threats." The display zoomed in on a primitive world covered in oceans and simple life forms. Earth, humans, are the last active sleeper agents, Hyok revealed. All others have either awakened and faded away or been destroyed by the very threats they were meant to face. Only humans survived their awakening and chose to continue existing as mortals. Jamin stared at the image of early Earth. So, the Terra incident was not the first time humans showed these abilities? No, but it was the first time they awakened to their full potential and then chose to reject it. This has never happened before in galactic history. Tae-hyun felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together. That is why the barrier is changing. The humans are not trying to escape. They are responding to some new threat. Hyok nodded grimly. Something is coming, something that has already destroyed 17 galaxies in this local cluster. The humans' unconscious minds are detecting it, and their predecessor heritage is trying to wake them up to respond. The chamber display changed again, showing dead galaxies stripped of all life and energy. In the center of each was a dark void that seemed to eat light itself. "We call them the Hunger," Hyok said. "They are not beings in any sense we understand. They are anti-existence, the opposite of creation. They consume reality itself, leaving nothing behind." "When will they arrive?" Sunmi asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Our calculations suggest they will reach this galaxy within 5 years. The humans know this, even in their sleep. Their shared dream consciousness has been preparing for the awakening." Tae-hyun realized the terrible choice facing the galaxy. "If we let the humans wake up, they might save us from this hunger. But they might also dominate us the way the predecessors did. Or we could try to keep them asleep and face the hunger with conventional weapons," Jamin added, "which would likely mean the death of all life in this galaxy." Elder Hyok studied them carefully. "There is a third option, one that has never been attempted before." "What do you mean?" Tae-hyun asked. "The humans chose sleep to preserve the free will of other species. But what if other species chose to work with awakened humans as partners rather than subjects? What if consciousness could be shared rather than dominated?" The idea was radical beyond anything Tae-hyun had ever considered. "You mean some kind of mental link between humans and other species?" "More than that. A true collective consciousness that includes human power but also non-human wisdom and independence. The humans provide the ability to reshape reality. Other species provide the moral framework to use that power responsibly." Sunmi looked skeptical. "Has anything like this ever been tried?" "Never. It would require unprecedented trust and cooperation. The humans would have to risk awakening without knowing if they could control themselves. Other species would have to risk mental contact with beings who could accidentally rewrite their entire existence." The chamber fell silent as they contemplated the magnitude of what Hyok was suggesting. "But consider the alternative," the ancient being continued. "Face the hunger alone and certainly die, or keep the humans asleep and probably die. This is the only option that offers both survival and preserved free will." Tae-hyun made a decision that would change galactic history. "How do we begin?" "First, you must convince your governments to end the slumber protocol. Then you must prepare your people for contact with awakening human consciousness. And finally, you must hope that humans remember why they chose to sleep before they fully remember what they used to be." As the silent dawn departed the Keeper Station, Tae-hyun sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. The universe was about to face its greatest threat in millions of years, and their only hope for survival lay in awakening the very beings they had spent 3 centuries keeping asleep. In the Sol system, human dreams began to change. Instead of peaceful shared experiences, they became filled with images of darkness consuming stars. The sleepers stirred, and reality shimmered in response to their growing awareness. The countdown to awakening had begun. On Earth's moon, Commander Minho stood in the observation deck of Monitoring Station Alpha. Through the transparent dome above his head, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. But something was wrong with that familiar view. The planet was flickering, not with light, but with existence itself. Sometimes Earth appeared normal. Sometimes it showed cities that had never been built, oceans in impossible colors, or continents shaped differently than any map. Reality was becoming unstable around the sleeping humans. "Commander," called his communications officer, a nervous young being named Yuna. "We are receiving the emergency transmission from Captain Tae-hyun again. He insists we wake our people and evacuate the system immediately." Minho shook his head. "We have our orders. Monitor and report. We do not abandon our posts." But privately, he was beginning to wonder if those orders made sense anymore. The monitoring station had been built to watch for signs of human awakening. For 300 years, it had been quiet. Now every instrument was screaming warnings about energy levels that broke their measurement scales. "Sir, look at this," called Yemen, his science officer. The display screen showed brainwave patterns from the human population. For centuries, these patterns had been slow and steady, like people in deep sleep. Now they were becoming complex, active, almost frantic. "They are dreaming," Jamin said. "But these are not normal dreams. The patterns show multiple consciousness streams connecting and separating. It is like they are sharing one massive dream between all of them. On Earth's surface, in a small city that had once been called Seoul, a man named Do-hyun lay in his bed in what appeared to be a normal apartment. But Do-hyun had been asleep for 300 years, sustained by technology that kept his body healthy while his mind wandered in the shared human dream. In that dream, Do-hyun was not a simple man living a simple life. He was a gardener, tending to universes. He could reach out with his thoughts and help stars be born, guide the evolution of life on distant worlds, and weave the fundamental forces of reality like threads in a tapestry. But tonight, the dream was changing. Dark spots were appearing in his garden universe. Places where his thoughts could not reach, where his care could not help things grow. The darkness was spreading, eating away at everything he had nurtured. "Something is coming," Do-hyun said to the other dreamers around him. In the dream space, he could see them clearly. Millions of humans, all working together to maintain the shared vision of themselves as cosmic gardeners. A woman named Unha approached him in the dream. She had been the voice of their collective consciousness for over a century, helping coordinate their shared sleep. "The darkness comes from outside our galaxy," she said. "It has consumed others. Now it seeks us." "Can we stop it in the dream?" Do-hyun asked. "No. Dreams cannot fight reality. We would need to wake up." Yuna's expression was sad and frightened. "But if we wake up, we might become what we were before, the ones who controlled everything without meaning to." Around them, other dreamers were gathering. They had felt the disturbance, too. Their shared garden universe was dying, and they could do nothing to stop it while they remained asleep. "Maybe we do not have a choice anymore," said a young voice. This came from In-woo, who had been born into the dream state and had never known physical reality. "If something is coming that can destroy everything, is it not better to risk becoming gods than to let everything die?" The dreamers fell silent, considering his words. On the monitoring station, Commander Minho watched his instruments register another impossible reading. Space-time was bending around Earth in ways that should require the energy output of an entire star. "Commander," Yuna called urgently, "we are detecting temporal anomalies across the Sol system. Time is moving at different speeds in different areas. Minho pulled up the readings on his main screen. The data showed zones where time moved 10 times faster than normal, areas where it moved backwards, and spots where it seemed to stop completely. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. But the anomalies are centered on population centers on Earth. Wherever large groups of humans are sleeping, reality is becoming unstable." A new alarm sounded. This one came from their long-range sensors, monitoring the barriers that surrounded the Sol system. "Sir, the barrier is not just weakening," Jamin reported. "It is changing purpose. Instead of keeping things out, it seems to be preparing to let something in." "Let what in?" Minho demanded. Before Jamin could answer, the station's main view screen activated on its own. The image that appeared was not from any of their cameras. It showed a vast space filled with swirling energy and impossible colors. In the center stood a figure that looked human but radiated power that made the screen flicker just from displaying it. "People of the galaxy," the figure said, its voice somehow reaching them despite the impossibility of sound in space. "I am Unha, voice of sleeping humanity. We know you monitor us. We know you fear us. But now we must speak with you." Minho stared in amazement. The sleeping humans were communicating with them directly, without any technology he could identify. "For 300 years, we have slept to protect your free will," Una continued. "But something comes that threatens all life. We can feel it approaching through the darkness between galaxies. In 5 years, it will arrive here." The image changed, showing the dead galaxies that Captain Tae-hyun had reported. Each one was a graveyard of consumed worlds, empty space where billions of civilizations had once thrived. "We could wake up now and face this threat," Una said. "But if we do, we might lose control again. We might save you from the hunger only to dominate you ourselves. This is the choice we have struggled with for centuries." "What do you want from us?" Minho found himself asking, though he had no idea if the sleeping humans could hear him. The image of Yunha smiled sadly. "We want what we have always wanted, to be part of the galactic community instead of standing apart from it, to use our abilities to help without overwhelming your independence." "How is that possible?" Yuna asked. "The Keepers have suggested a new way," Yunha replied. "A shared consciousness between our species and yours. We provide the power to reshape reality. You provide the wisdom to guide that power responsibly. Together we might face the hunger as equals rather than as gods and mortals." The implications hit Minho like a physical blow. "You want us to link our minds with yours?" "Only volunteers," Yuna said quickly. "And only if your governments agree. We will not force this on anyone, but time grows short. Each day we delay, the hunger comes closer." The image began to fade. "We will give you time to consider. But remember, the choice is no longer between sleeping and waking. The choice is between facing the darkness alone or facing it together." The view screen went dark, leaving the monitoring station in stunned silence. Minho immediately activated his communications array, sending emergency reports to every major government in the galaxy. The slumber protocol was no longer just about keeping humanity asleep. It was about deciding whether the galaxy would unite with them or face extinction separately. On Earth, Do-hyun felt the first stirrings of true awakening. His physical body, sleeping in soul, began to remember what it felt like to be awake. His mind, dreaming of cosmic gardens, began to remember what it felt like to have the power to make those gardens real. Around the world, other humans started the same process. 3 centuries of imposed sleep were ending, whether anyone was ready or not. The universe watched and waited, holding its breath as humanity prepared to remember what they had chosen to forget. In the darkness between galaxies, the hunger sensed, awakening consciousness and turned its attention toward this new source of potential nourishment. The final countdown had begun. Across the galaxy, impossible things began to happen. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, workers discovered that their excavated tunnels had somehow filled themselves with crystal formations overnight. The crystals were not made of any known material, but they sang with harmonic frequencies that made everyone who heard them feel peaceful and hopeful. On the trading station of Nexus Prime, a cargo bay full of dying plants suddenly bloomed with vibrant life. The flowers that grew were more beautiful than any seen before, and their scent could cure minor ailments in a dozen different species. On the war-torn planet of Vega 7th, where 2 species had been fighting for generations over territory, soldiers on both sides found themselves unable to raise weapons against each other. Instead, they sat down together and began discussing ways to share their world peacefully. In the capital city of the Vrex Collective, Ambassador Kale received reports of these anomalies from across his territory. Each incident was small, seemingly harmless, even beneficial, but they all shared one disturbing characteristic. They happened without any apparent cause. "How many reports do we have now?" Kale asked his aide Minji. "Over 3,000 in the past week," she replied, her purple skin pale with worry. "And they are accelerating. Yesterday we received 400 new reports." Kale studied the holographic map showing incident locations. They formed a pattern, radiating outward from the Sol system like ripples in a pond. The humans are waking up, and their awakening is affecting reality itself. In deep space, Captain Tae-hyun watched similar readings from the bridge of the silent Dawn. His ship was now stationed at the edge of the Sol system, monitoring the weakening barrier that had contained humanity for 3 centuries. "Captain," called his science officer Sunmi, "we are detecting massive energy discharges from Earth's population centers, but the energy is not destructive. It appears to be creative." "What do you mean?" Tae-hyun asked. "The energy signatures match theoretical patterns for matter reorganization and temporal adjustment. Someone down there is rebuilding reality on a fundamental level." As if summoned by their conversation, the view screen activated. This time it showed a young human man floating in what appeared to be empty space, surrounded by swirling galaxies that existed only in his imagination. "My name is Kyung Min," the man said. "I am one of the early awakeners. I need to speak with representatives of the galactic community." Tae-hyun stepped forward. "I am Captain Tae-hyun of the Silent Dawn. We have been monitoring your system under the Slumber Protocol." "The protocol is ending," Kyungmin said simply. "We cannot remain asleep while the hunger approaches, but we are trying to wake up slowly, carefully, so we do not lose control again." "The reality distortions we are detecting," Tae-hyun said, "are those from humans who are already awake?" Kyungmin nodded. "A few thousand of us have achieved partial awakening. We are practicing using our abilities on a small scale, trying to remember how to help without overwhelming. But some of the effects are reaching planets hundreds of light years away," Sunmi observed. "Distance means little to awakened consciousness," Kyungmin explained. "When we think about making something better, that intention travels instantly, across space. We are trying to limit our thoughts to small, helpful changes, but it is difficult." He paused, and his expression grew troubled. "There is something else you need to know. The partial awakening has allowed us to sense the hunger." "More clearly. It is closer than we thought, not 5 years away. Perhaps 3. On the Virex homeworld, Minji received an urgent communication from her government's scientific council. Dr. Yuna, the lead physicist studying the reality distortions, had made a disturbing discovery. The effects are not random, Dr. Yuna explained, through the holographic display. They follow patterns consistent with conscious intent. Someone is deliberately modifying reality to make things better, more beautiful, more peaceful. "That sounds wonderful," Minji said. "Why are you concerned?" "Because the modifications are spreading beyond their intended targets. When a human thinks about making plants grow better, every plant in that solar system is affected. When they think about reducing conflict, every aggressive species in that sector becomes more peaceful." Minji felt her stomach drop. "They are doing exactly what they did 300 years ago, changing things without realizing the full scope of their influence. Worse, the effects are compounding. Each awakened human makes reality more responsive to consciousness. As more of them wake up, their collective influence will grow exponentially." The implications were staggering. Even with the best intentions, humanity was beginning to override the natural order of the universe. Back on Earth, Kyungmin floated in his apartment in what had once been Tokyo. But the city below him no longer looked like the Tokyo of old. The buildings had reshaped themselves into flowing, organic forms that seemed to grow rather than being built. The air was cleaner than it had been in centuries. The harbor waters sparkled with life that had not existed for millennia. He had not meant to change so much. He had only wanted his home to be a little more beautiful, a little healthier. But his thoughts had been amplified by his awakening abilities until they transformed the entire metropolitan area. "We need help," he said to the collective consciousness that connected all awakening humans. "We cannot control this alone." The response came from Yunha, still serving as their coordinator. "The galactic community must decide soon whether to work with us or evacuate to distant galaxies. We cannot remain partially awake much longer. Either we return to deep sleep or we finish awakening." "And if we finish awakening without guidance," Kyungmin asked, "then we become what the predecessors were. Well-meaning gods who accidentally dominate everything around them." In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions ran around the clock. Representatives from every major civilization debated 3 options: attempt to force humanity back to sleep, evacuate the galaxy before the hunger arrived, or accept the Keeper's proposal for shared consciousness. The debate was fierce. Many species preferred evacuation to the risk of mental contact with awakening gods. Others argued that running would only delay the inevitable, that the hunger would eventually find them wherever they went. But a growing number, led by Ambassador Kyle and influenced by Minji's research, supported the unprecedented experiment. In cooperative consciousness, we have lived in peace for 3 centuries because humanity chose to sacrifice their freedom for our safety, Kyle argued. Perhaps it is time for us to show the same courage they did. The vote was scheduled for the next day. Every species in the galaxy would decide humanity's fate and their own. On Earth, more humans stirred toward awakening. Each one who crossed the threshold between sleep and consciousness made reality a little more responsive to thought, a little more malleable to will. Time was running out. Soon, humanity would be too awake to return to sleep, and too powerful to coexist safely with unaltered consciousness. The universe balanced on the edge of transformation, waiting to see if its children could learn to share power as equals, or if history would repeat itself with a new generation of reluctant gods. In the darkness between galaxies, the hunger sensed the growing disturbance and accelerated its approach. It had consumed 17 galaxies already. This one, with its awakening, predecessors and panicking mortals, promised to be especially nourishing. The final choice could not be delayed much longer. The joint galactic fleet hung in space at the edge of the Sol system like a great metal cloud. Ships from every major civilization had gathered for what might be the most important decision in galactic history. At the fleet's center was the massive Vrex Command Vessel Harmony's Edge, where representatives from dozens of species debated humanity's fate. Commander Su-Young stood on the bridge, watching the readings from their sensors. Her silver hair reflected the lights from the control panels as she studied reports of the growing reality distortions around Earth. As the fleet's military leader, she had been tasked with an impossible job: prepare for every possible outcome of this encounter. "Commander," called her communications officer, "we are receiving another transmission from the awakening humans." The main view screen activated, showing a figure that made the entire bridge crew gasp. This was not like the previous contacts with Yunha or Kyung-min. This being appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "I am Ji-hoon," the figure said, his voice resonating through space itself. "I speak for the awakening collective of humanity. We know you have come to make a choice about our future." Ambassador Kale, present on the bridge as the diplomatic leader, stepped forward. "We have come to offer you alternatives," he said carefully. "Return to sleep, accept voluntary exile to the void between galaxies, or participate in the consciousness-sharing experiment proposed by the Keepers." Ji-hoon's expression was sad, but understanding. "You also carry a fourth option. We can sense the weapon you have built." Su-Young felt her blood run cold. The consciousness dampener was the fleet's most closely guarded secret, designed by the Keepers as a last resort. It could theoretically force all humans back into permanent sleep, but using it would essentially lobotomize the entire species. "We hoped that would not be necessary," Kale said. "So did we," Ji-hoon replied. "But you must understand our situation. Every moment we remain partially awake, we risk losing control. Already our collective thoughts are reshaping reality across multiple star systems. If we do not make a decision soon, the choice will be made for us." The view screen split, showing images from across the galaxy. Worlds where impossible gardens bloomed overnight. Space stations where broken machinery repaired itself. War zones where weapons simply stopped functioning. "We are becoming what the predecessors were," Ji-hoon continued. "Beings so powerful that our very existence overwrites the free will of others. This is why we chose sleep 300 years ago." "But something has changed," Su-Young observed. "You are communicating with us as equals. The predecessors never did that." "Because we remember now what they forgot," Ji-hoon said. "We remember what it feels like to be mortal. We remember the value of choice, of struggle, of growth through limitation. The predecessors became so powerful they forgot why they had wanted power in the first place." A new voice joined the conversation. This came from Hanel, the collective voice of humanity's still sleeping majority. Her image appeared alongside Ji-hoon's, but she remained clearly human in appearance. "We have been debating in the dream space," Hanel said. Some of us want to wake fully and face the hunger with our complete power. Others prefer to return to sleep and let the galaxy face its fate without our interference. But most of us want to try the experiment with shared consciousness. Why? Kyle asked. Because it offers something we have never had before, Ji-hoon answered. The chance to be powerful and mortal at the same time. To use godlike abilities while maintaining the wisdom that comes from understanding limitation. Soo-young pulled up tactical displays on her console. Our analysts estimate that if you wake fully, you could indeed stop the hunger. But the collateral effects on galactic civilization would be catastrophic. We know, Hanel said sadly. We have run the calculations in our shared dreams. To defeat the hunger, we would need to reshape reality on a scale that would fundamentally alter every living being in the galaxy. You would survive, but you would no longer be yourselves. And if you remain asleep? Soo-young asked. The hunger will consume everything, Ji-hoon replied. We have seen its work in other galaxies. It does not just destroy life. It unravels the very concept of existence, leaving behind void that cannot even be called empty space. The bridge fell silent as they contemplated the impossible choice. There is another consideration, Hanil said. The consciousness-sharing experiment has never been tested. It might fail completely, leaving us unable to function either as gods or mortals. Or worse, Ji-hoon added, it might succeed too well. The merged consciousness might become something neither human nor alien, but something entirely new. Commander Soo-young made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. I volunteer for the first test. The bridge erupted in shocked protests from her crew. Commander, that is not advisable, Kale said. We do not know what mental contact with awakened humans might do to non-human consciousness. Which is exactly why we need to find out, Soo-young replied. If we are asking humanity to risk losing themselves in this experiment, then we must be willing to risk the same. Ji-hoon's multi-dimensional form focused on her with an intensity that made the air around her shimmer. You understand that this cannot be undone? Once our consciousness touches yours, you will carry part of our awakened nature forever. And you will carry part of my mortal perspective, Soo-young replied. That seems fair. Commander, I must protest, said her tactical officer. This could compromise the entire mission. But Soo-young was already walking toward the view screen. If this works, there will be no need for weapons or evacuations. If it fails, at least we will know before committing our entire civilization to the experiment. She placed her hand on the communication console. I am ready. The connection began, slowly. At first, Soo-young felt only a gentle presence at the edge of her thoughts. Then, gradually, she became aware of the vast network of human consciousness that stretched across the Sol system. But instead of being overwhelmed, she found herself welcomed. The human collective embraced her thoughts gently, sharing their memories and perspectives without forcing them upon her. She saw the universe through their eyes, felt the weight of their power and the burden of their responsibility. At the same time, she felt Ji-hoon experiencing her memories. He saw what it meant to live as a mortal being, to face uncertainty and death, to find meaning in limitation and struggle. It works, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I can feel their power, but I am still myself. And they are learning what it means to be mortal again. The connection deepened, and suddenly Soo-young could sense something else. Through the human collective's awakened perception, she felt the approaching hunger. It was closer than any of them had realized, and more terrible than their worst fears, but she also felt something unexpected. Hope. The merged consciousness had capabilities that neither species possessed alone, human power guided by mortal wisdom, mortal determination enhanced by transcendent ability. "We can face it together," she said to the bridge crew. Not as gods protecting mortals or mortals serving gods, but as partners in the truest sense. The experiment had succeeded beyond all expectations. Now they had to convince two entire civilizations to trust each other with their most fundamental, nature. Time was running out. The hunger would arrive within 2 years, not 3. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a real chance that someone would be ready for it. Earth was no longer the blue marble that had hung in space for billions of years. As more humans awakened and joined the consciousness-sharing experiment, the planet transformed into something that existed partially outside normal reality. Cities flowed like living organisms, reshaping themselves according to the needs and dreams of their inhabitants. The oceans glowed with bioluminescent life forms that had never existed before, but felt ancient and familiar. The sky showed stars from multiple dimensions, creating patterns of beauty that hurt to look at directly, but filled observers with profound peace. In what had once been the city of Busan, a young human named Inwu sat in a garden that grew in directions that should not exist. He had been born into the dream state 300 years ago, and had never experienced physical reality until the awakening began. Now he existed simultaneously in the physical world and the expanded consciousness of awakened humanity. "The memories are becoming clearer," he said to Gayong, who appeared beside him as both a physical presence and a manifestation of Earth's planetary consciousness. "I can remember what the predecessors were like before they became too powerful. To live alongside other beings." Gayong nodded, her form shifting between human appearance and something that looked like a living galaxy. "The genetic locks are fully opening now. Each awakened human carries the complete history of our species' transcendent past, but also our mortal present," Inwu said. "Thanks to the consciousness sharing with other species, we remember what it feels like to be limited, to be afraid, to need help from others." Above them, the sky rippled as another 1,000 humans completed their awakening. Each new awakening added to the collective power but also to the collective wisdom, as mortal perspectives from allied species balanced the growing godlike abilities. In space, Commander Su-Yung floated freely between her command ship and Earth's surface, her consciousness existing in both places simultaneously. The merger with human collective awareness had changed her in ways she was still discovering. She could perceive reality from multiple dimensions, but she retained her mortal instincts and values. "Status report," she said, her voice reaching both her bridge crew and the awakening humans through pure thought. 17 million humans have completed awakening," reported her tactical officer through their mental link. "Reality distortions are stabilizing as they learn to coordinate their abilities, but we are detecting massive energy buildups across the galaxy." The energy signatures were coming from ancient installations that had been dormant for millions of years. Predecessor technology, responding to humanity's awakening and preparing for the coming battle against the hunger. On the bridge of the Silent Dawn, Captain Tae-hyun studied readings that showed star systems being fortified by unknown forces. Entire planets were gaining protective energy shields. Dying stars were being reignited. Dead worlds were spontaneously developing ecosystems. "The awakened humans are not just preparing Earth," his science officer Sunmi observed. "They are preparing the entire galaxy." "But not alone," Tae-hyun replied, feeling the presence of the human collective at the edge of his thoughts. Like thousands of other volunteers from various species, he had accepted partial consciousness sharing. I can feel them consulting with every species before making changes. They are asking permission before improving things. This was the crucial difference between the current awakening and what had happened 300 years ago. The humans were no longer acting on their own judgment of what needed improvement. They were working as partners with beings who understood the value of natural development and free choice. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Kale addressed an emergency session that included both physical representatives and consciousness-projected humans. "The transformation is accelerating beyond our models," he reported, "but it remains cooperative rather than dominating. Human abilities are being guided by collective wisdom from all participating species." Jihoon appeared in the center of the Gyu chamber, his multidimensional form now stable and reassuring rather than overwhelming. "We have learned something important from this partnership. Absolute power does not have to corrupt if it is balanced by absolute accountability." "What do you mean?" asked Counselor Vorth. "Every time we use our abilities, we feel the impact through the consciousness of other species. When we heal a world, we experience the joy of its inhabitants. When we make a star burn brighter, we feel the relief of planets that depend on its warmth. We cannot harm others without harming ourselves." A new presence joined the discussion. This was Dong Yun, representing the Galactic Council's emergency coordination efforts. "Our latest readings show the hunger will arrive in 18 months, not 2 years. It is accelerating as it senses our preparations." The chamber fell silent. 18 months to prepare for a threat that had destroyed 17 galaxies. "Are we ready?" Kale asked. "We are becoming ready," Jihoon replied. "But there is something else you must know. The awakening has allowed us to see the true nature of the hunger. It is not just a destroyer of matter and energy. It consumes the concept of existence itself." Images flowed through the shared consciousness, showing the hunger's work in other galaxies, not just dead worlds, but spaces where the idea of worlds had been erased. Not just extinct species, but voids where the possibility of life had been unraveled. "Fighting it will require more than power," Gayung said, her voice reaching the council through the consciousness link. "It will require the ability to reassert the fundamental nature of reality itself." "Can we do that?" So-Young asked. "Perhaps," Inwu said, his young voice carrying ancient wisdom. "The predecessors could, but they fought alone with their own understanding of reality. We fight together, with perspectives from thousands of species and billions of individual minds." The discussion was interrupted by alarms from monitoring. "Stations across the galaxy, long-range sensors were detecting something at the galaxy's edge." "It is here," Dongyun reported, his voice tight with fear. "The advanced scouts of the hunger have arrived." The images that reached them through shared consciousness were horrifying. Not ships or beings, but areas of space where existence was simply ending. Stars going out not because they were destroyed, but because the concept of stellar fusion was being erased from reality. 18 months has become 18 days, Jihoon said grimly. The hunger moves faster when it senses resistance. Across the galaxy, awakened humans and their consciousness. Sharing partners felt the approaching threat. Reality itself seemed to shudder as the hunger's influence reached into their dimensional space. But instead of despair, they felt determination. For the first time in cosmic history, mortals and transcendent beings were working as true partners. They had power enough to reshape reality and wisdom enough to use it responsibly. All awakened humans to full consciousness, Gayung announced. All participating species to maximum integration. We face the end of existence itself, but we do not face it alone. The final battle for reality was about to begin. In the depths of space, the hunger sensed the unprecedented merger of mortal wisdom and transcendent power, and for the first time in its existence across multiple universes, it hesitated. Perhaps this galaxy would be different. Perhaps this time, existence would not go quietly into the void. The final confrontation began not with explosions or battles, but with the gradual erasure of the galaxy's outer rim. Star systems simply stopped existing, leaving behind spaces that were not empty, but absent of the very concept of space itself. In the merged consciousness that now connected billions of minds across thousands of species, Jiwan emerged as humanity's primary voice. Unlike the previous speakers, she existed simultaneously as a fully awakened human and as a representative who could communicate with unenhanced mortals. The hunger is not destroying our galaxy, she explained to the combined fleet commanders and government leaders. It is editing it out of reality. Each system it touches becomes a place where existence never happened. Commander Su-Yung, now permanently consciousness-linked with the human collective, studied tactical displays that showed the approaching void. How do we fight something that erases the battlefield itself? We do not fight it, said Seung-ho, one of the keeper philosophers who had joined the consciousness-sharing experiment. We rewrite it. The concept was staggering. Instead of attacking the hunger directly, they would assert their own version of reality so strongly that it would override the hunger's negation effect. But that requires unanimous agreement about what reality should be, observed Mayong, who coordinated the Galactic Council's restructuring efforts. Every consciousness in the link must share the same vision of existence. Across the galaxy, the merged consciousness began the most ambitious project in cosmic history. Billions of minds worked together to define the fundamental nature of reality itself, not just matter and energy, but the concepts of time, space, causation, and existence. Young In-woo, despite his recent birth into physical reality, played a crucial role. His consciousness had been shaped by both human transcendence and mortal wisdom from the beginning. He could see possibilities that neither purely human nor purely alien minds could grasp. We are trying to rebuild reality from the outside, he observed during one of the planning sessions that took place at the speed of thought. But reality is not a thing that can be built. It is a story that is being told. What do you mean? Asked Jiwan. The hunger succeeds because it convinces the universe that things never existed. It changes the story. We need to tell a better story, one so compelling that the universe chooses to believe it instead. This insight transformed their entire approach. Instead of trying to impose their version of reality through pure power, they began crafting a narrative of existence that was more meaningful, more beautiful, and more necessary than the void the hunger offered. Every species contributed their unique perspective to this cosmic story. The warrior races provided concepts of courage and struggle that gave existence purpose. The peaceful civilizations offered ideas of harmony and growth that made existence beautiful. The ancient species, like the keepers, provided wisdom about the long cycles of creation and renewal, and humans provided the power to make the story real. As the hunger advanced deeper into the galaxy, consuming more star systems, the merged consciousness began their counter-narrative. Instead of fighting the erasure, They started rewriting the consumed areas with something better than what had been there before. Dead zones became birthplaces for new types of stars that burned with impossible colors but provided warmth to planets that had never existed. Erased worlds were replaced with gardens of crystalline life that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Voided space became galleries of living art that told the story of every species that had ever lived. The hunger paused its advance, confused by this response. In every other galaxy, resistance had meant direct confrontation. Civilizations had tried to fight erasure with preservation, to counter nothingness with desperate attempts to maintain what already existed. But this galaxy was not trying to preserve the old reality. It was creating a new one, more beautiful and meaningful than anything that had come before. "It is working," reported Ga-Yung. Her consciousness now expanded to encompass Earth's entire solar system. The hunger cannot erase something that is actively being reimagined into existence. But the effort was enormous. Even with billions of minds working together, rewriting reality in real time required constant focus and energy. Some of the consciousness-linked beings began to show signs of strain. "We cannot maintain this indefinitely," warned Su-Yung. "We need to end this, not just contain it." Ji-Wan had been thinking about this problem. The hunger exists because somewhere, in some universe, beings believed that nothingness was preferable to existence. It is the embodiment of cosmic despair. We cannot destroy it, but we can cure it. "How do you cure nothingness?" asked Seung-ho. "By showing it something worth existing for." The plan that emerged was audacious beyond anything attempted in cosmic history. Instead of excluding the hunger from their reality rewriting project, they would include it. They would tell a story so compelling that even the embodiment of negation would choose to become part of it, rather than destroy it. The merged. Consciousness reached out to the hunger, not with weapons or barriers, but with an invitation to join their narrative. They showed it what existence could be when guided by both transcendent power and mortal wisdom. They offered it a role in the story they were telling, not as a destroyer, but as a teacher of the value of existence. For countless eons, the hunger had consumed galaxies because civilizations had nothing to offer it but fear and resistance. But this galaxy offered it something unprecedented: inclusion and purpose. The hunger hesitated at the edge of the Sol system, its void nature touching the edges of humanity's transformed reality. For the first time since its creation, it encountered existence that was not afraid of non-existence, but instead embraced it as part of a larger story. Slowly, carefully, the merged consciousness began to integrate the hunger into their cosmic narrative. Its power to negate existence became a tool for editing out suffering and meaninglessness. Its ability to erase became a way to remove the barriers between species and dimensions. Instead of destroying the galaxy, the hunger found itself becoming part of a new kind of existence, one that included both being and non-being as necessary elements of a greater whole. The transformation took months. Gradually, the void zones left by the hunger's advance filled with new forms of reality that had never existed before. Spaces where time moved in circles, allowing past and future to coexist. Dimensions where thought and matter were the same thing. Worlds where different species could share consciousness while maintaining their individual natures. When it was over, the galaxy had become something unprecedented. A place where mortal and transcendent beings existed as partners, where reality was constantly being improved through collective wisdom, and where even the concept of destruction had been transformed into a tool for positive change. "We did it," Jiwon said to the merged consciousness that now included every living being in the galaxy, including the transformed hunger. "We found a way to be powerful without becoming tyrants, to be gods without losing our mortality." The universe had learned a new law to replace the old one, not "don't wake the humans," but "wake together, dream together, exist together." And in the space between galaxies, other instances of the hunger sensed what had happened here. For the first time in their existence, they felt something they had never experienced before: curiosity about what it might be like to choose existence over void. The story was spreading. Reality itself was being rewritten, one galaxy at a time, by beings who had learned that the greatest power was not the ability to control others, but the wisdom to grow together. The universe had found a new way to exist, and it was beautiful.